For more analysis, I'm now joined by Broderick McDonald. He's an associate fellow with the International Centre for the Study of Radicalization at King's College London. Thanks very much for being on the program today. I want to start by asking you your thoughts on what's taken place over the last couple of days here and what you think happens now.
Thanks, Linda. It's been an unbelievable couple of days. The HTS offensive began, I think, 12 days ago now, and it really didn't initially look like it would get further than Aleppo. I mean, even the Aleppo outskirts were what they were initially hoping for. They wanted to increase that buffer zone around their home base in Idlib, and that was really the extent of it. But as they went, they kept running into less and less resistance. Many of the Iranian, Russian, Hezbollah proxies that had propped up the Assad regime just collapsed or were already missing by the time they got there. And so they just kept pushing through to Aleppo, which is Syria's second largest city, down to Hama, then Homs, then the capital.
And as you talk about the sort of little resistance that they met along the course of getting to this result today, can you break down just how we got here? Of course, this has been going on for a long time, but in the end, the fall came pretty quickly. What was it when it comes to sort of geopolitics or other events going on in the world that opened the door for these rebel groups to make these large strides?
There's two big factors that explain it. The first is what you just mentioned, the fact that Iran, Hezbollah, Russia are increasingly distracted and overstretched in various different conflicts right now. But the other part of it is what HTS and Jolani has done over the last 4 or 5 years, really professionalizing his force and trying to turn it into a conventional military, establishing a military academy, setting up a government to govern the territories that they previously held. So they have done a lot to really prepare themselves for this moment. And then it was just a matter of the right timing and the right opportunity for the group to really break out of its enclave.
Now let's talk about HTS, because we know that this group is a former al-Qaeda affiliate, since distanced itself from al-Qaeda, says it's focusing on building a civilian government. What should we know about the group and the other groups at play here who could potentially try to take power?
Yeah, HTS is a group that started out of the Nusra Front, and even its leader, Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, was a foreign fighter who went to Iraq in 2003. He went to fight with al-Qaeda, at the very beginning of the Iraq War. He spent a number of years in Iraq before coming back and really launched his own IS affiliate within Syria, eventually decided to take it in his own direction and affiliated with al-Qaeda before leaving them. And in the last few years, he's shifted to this more pragmatic, more locally focused version of the group. But there's real questions as to, is this genuine and can it last long term? I mean, it's one thing to, go on a charm offensive right now when he needs international support, when he needs support from Syrians, and he wants to convince everybody that he is, a responsible, safe actor. But there are deep questions that remain as to what he will do after this conflict calms down, when he actually takes up governing, or if his party or if his group plays a leading role in any coalition. There's real questions as to what it does for international security, but also for minorities in Syria, which is what makes Syria so unique and so special. The Kurdish, the Alawite, the Druze, the Christian communities within Syria, and many of them are worried now given the group's history of human rights abuses.
And we know that Assad's biggest allies were Russia, Iran. We've heard from Russia saying, that they're sort of stepping away here. Have they just washed their hands of Syria now, or can we expect to see any moves from those allies?
Iran and Russia are in full damage control now. It's worth remembering that both countries have invested billions of dollars, have sent extensive military equipment and personnel over the last 14 years to prop up Bashar al-Assad. All of that has come to nothing now. They've lost their most important ally in the region, And I think this changes the entire geopolitical landscape for the Middle East. We, for years have talked about how Iran wanted to establish this land bridge between Iran and the Mediterranean, using proxy groups in Iraq, Syria, and then Hezbollah. The collapse of Assad throws all of that into question for Iran and really changes the entire dynamics of the situation.
And I want to ask you just finally about Western nations and how Western nations respond now. We know that the Biden administration has been meeting to discuss the events of the last couple of days. How do they move forward now without being seen as supportive of HTS?
It's a really difficult question. And one thing that is important to point out is while HTS led this offensive, there are other rebel groups, including the Turkish-backed SNA, the Syrian National Army, which was formed out of the remnants of the Free Syrian Army, as well as local groups, especially in the south, which also played an important role. So while HTS and Jilani is certainly the most organized and cohesive faction within Syria right now, there are other groups. There are others that should and can play a role in Syria. And I think any future government, any future governing system in Syria needs to take into account all of the different minority communities, all of the different regions that have been ignored or neglected over the past 14 years. No government in Syria will be stable unless it does that. And I think for the West, right now we need to wait and see. This is not a time when the West or any international actor, be that Iran or Russia, should get involved. But we should watch and see how HTS behaves. We should pay attention more to actions rather than words, and see what the next few days and weeks look like, supporting Syrians as much as we can through aid and other mechanisms that have been, severely curtailed over the past 14 years.
Broderick McDonald, appreciate your time and your thoughts on this.
Thank you.
Broderick McDonald is with the International Centre for the Study of Radicalization at King's College London. Stay with us. We have much more coverage on this just ahead.